There is no awakening of consciousness without pain. Carl Jung. This statement strikes deeply, compelling us to reflect on the very essence of human suffering. In the modern world, countless individuals feel crushed under the weight of obligations, external expectations, and the relentless pressure to live up to unattainable standards. Each day, we are pushed further away from ourselves, chasing compensations that never truly fill the inner emptiness. It is as if we were living to satisfy demands not born of our soul, but imposed by society, family, or even social media. Yet Jung issued a brutal warning. Neurosis and anxiety are not merely illnesses to be eradicated, but messages from the psyche urging transformation. What if your anxiety were in fact a profound signal from your soul? This is the invitation of this video, to understand what it means to stop living for the approval of others and to awaken to your inner truth. The void of modern man. We inhabit an age dominated by unceasing stimuli. Social media, for example, has created a culture of constant comparison where seemingly perfect lives are displayed like glittering showcases. Rather than inspiring, this daily exposure often generates feelings of inferiority, since no one can measure up to such unrealistic ideals. At the same time, we are bombarded with a continuous stream of bad news, economic crises, natural disasters, political conflicts, and global threats. Each notification, each headline, reinforces the sense of uncertainty about the future, feeding collective anxiety even further. But there is more. Even when we disconnect from our devices and seek silence, the unease lingers. It is a void that does not originate solely from the external world, but from the distance between the life we live and our deepest values. This rift between our reality and what we long to become opens the door to profound unrest. Jung captured this experience when he stated, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." Carl Jung. This inner emptiness is not merely an absence of meaning, but an open wound that widens when we ignore our own truth. And it is precisely this wound that leads us to the next point. Anxiety as a reflection of denied truth. Anxiety arises not only from external chaos, but above all, from the silent conflict we carry within. When we shape our decisions to please others, we betray our own essence. Unrealistic expectations, relentless self-criticism, and the constant fear of failure create fertile soil for anxiety to take root. It is not just about confronting social pressures, but about living in contradiction to who we truly are. Picture someone who chooses a career not out of passion, but to meet the family's expectations. At first, it might appear to be a rational choice, but over time, a gap emerges between the life one leads and the authentic desires of the soul. That abyss manifests as persistent unease, constant tension, and ultimately anxiety. The further we drift from our truth, the more suffocating this inner state becomes. Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. Carl Jung. This phrase reveals the heart of the issue. When we avoid facing our pains and truths, the mind generates symptoms to draw our attention. Anxiety, then, is not the enemy, but a sign that we are living out of alignment with our authentic selves. And it is at this point that Jung's perspective on neurosis becomes profoundly significant. Jung's view on neurosis. Carl Jung perceived neurosis in a way completely different from conventional thought. For him, it was not simply a flaw of the mind, but a precious sign, a call from the psyche toward transformation. The symptoms, often uncomfortable and paralyzing, function as hidden messages, pointing out that the individual has strayed from their deepest truth. In this sense, anxiety, melancholy, and compulsive behaviors are not merely obstacles, but invitations to real change. In contemporary society, however, neurosis is often confronted only at the level of symptoms. Quick treatments and medication may bring temporary relief, but rarely touch the roots of suffering. It is like placing a bandage on a wound that requires deep cleansing. The pain may subside for a while, but the infection remains. Jung warned that by masking these signs without reflecting on their causes, we lose the opportunity for true self-knowledge. I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. Carl Jung. This statement reveals the very core of his perspective. Neurosis can serve as a stepping stone toward individuation, the process of building a more authentic and meaningful life. Therefore, rather than ignoring or suppressing our symptoms, Jung invites us to listen to them and interpret them as messages from the soul. Anxiety then ceases to be viewed as an enemy and becomes understood as a guide. Such comprehension opens the door for us to reflect on the unavoidable challenges that all of us, sooner or later, must face. The inevitable challenges of life. For Jung, human existence is defined by unavoidable tasks that shape our psyche and direct our growth. These are not arbitrary choices, but universal demands of life. Among them is the need to break free from psychological dependence on our parents, gaining emotional autonomy and a personal identity. Without this step, we remain bound by invisible chains, incapable of forging an authentic path. Another unavoidable task is social integration, forming bonds, contributing to the community, and finding our place within the collective. Isolation may feel comfortable at times, but it is through interaction with others that we recognize ourselves and mature. In addition, Jung emphasized the search for purpose and meaning as one of life's central tasks. Without a why, daily life becomes a burden, and the soul sinks into emptiness. Finally, there's the inevitable confrontation with death, a universal reality that, far from being only a source of fear, can act as a catalyst for depth and authenticity. When we flee from these tasks or allow ourselves to be dominated by inertia and self-sabotage, inner conflicts arise that, left unresolved, feed neurosis. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. These words reveal that denying life's fundamental demands is allowing unconscious forces to imprison us. Symptoms, therefore, are not mere accidents but signals that we are resisting our own path. And it is precisely in this struggle that internal conflict and psychological regression emerge, leading us into the next chapter. Internal conflict and regression. When the unavoidable challenges of life are denied or ignored, our psyche seeks alternative routes to cope with the pressure. This process, described by Jung, is psychological regression, a return to more childish or immature modes of functioning. Instead of facing dilemmas directly, the individual sinks into symptoms such as persistent anxiety, phobias, depression, compulsions, or apathy. These signals do not appear out of nowhere. They are unconscious attempts to escape the tensions we cannot yet handle with maturity. The contrast between the passing of physical time and the stagnation of psychological growth becomes painful. The body ages, but the soul remains trapped in unresolved conflicts. This dissonance creates a deep sense of inadequacy that reveals itself unmistakably, as though the mirror reminds us daily that our inner evolution does not keep pace with the life that moves forward. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Carl Jung. This statement shines a light on the possible path, the need to turn inward and confront what we have been avoiding. Symptoms, far from being mere torments, act as warning signals, indicating that something essential is being neglected. The more we ignore these calls, the more we become imprisoned in a cycle of suffering and regression. But when we choose to face the conflict directly, we transform pain into an opportunity for growth. It is precisely at this point that Jung's most brutal advice emerges: to stop living to please others and embrace the courage to be who we truly are. Jung's brutal advice: stop living to please others. In his profound vision of the psyche, Jung warned that one of the greatest sources of human suffering is living to satisfy others. When we shape our decisions around external expectations, we abandon what is most essential, our inner truth. Though this path may appear safer, it quietly produces tension that manifests as anxiety, discouragement, and emptiness. The pursuit of constant approval becomes an invisible prison where the soul is condemned to deny its authenticity. For Jung, true freedom does not arise from conforming to the world's demands, but from honoring one's individuality. The inevitable suffering of life can be transformed into growth when faced with authenticity. The greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. This phrase is the heart of his brutal counsel, for it calls us to strip away masks and confront the pain of being honest with ourselves. In this context, anxiety ceases to be an enemy and becomes a warning sign, revealing that we are living to satisfy others at the expense of our own being. By recognizing this truth, we create space for individuation where the authentic self can finally flourish. And it is at this turning point that the key lies, understanding anxiety as a message from the soul and committing to live in harmony with who we truly are. We now arrive at the crucial point of this reflection. Anxiety and neurosis, so feared in our society, can be understood not merely as illnesses, but as profound messages from the soul. They remind us that there is a gap between the life we live and the truth we carry within. Jung reminds us that behind pain, there is always an invitation to awaken. The unlived life is a disease from which one can die. Carl Jung. This statement resounds as a call to embrace the courage of living in accordance with who we really are. The goal is not to eliminate all suffering, but to transform it into a path of authenticity. And now, I leave you with a question to reflect upon. Are you living to please others, or to fulfill who you truly are? If this video brought you clarity, like, comment, and share. Your participation is essential for the growth of this space. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Also, leave your comment. Have you been living to please others or to realize who you truly are? Your interaction is fundamental for us to continue creating content that transforms and awakens.